Before coming to live in Mongolia, I didn't really know much about this country. And I will admit, I didn't do that many researches either. If you ask me why, well, everything was going to be new. I guess I just didn't really want to be disappointed in case I got my hopes and expectations up. I live in Ulaanbaatar, the capital of Mongolia. Well, when I got here, I was so surprised to see the contrast between all the buildings and the beautiful mountains in the back. Weeks were going by. Day by day, I learned something new about this culture. And I was simply falling in love with a new country. But there's gotta be more than business centers and traffic, I would think. And I want to find it out.
And I did. I am Milena Mendes and I came all the way from Brazil to explore a little bit more of Mongolia. Recently, I took a 10-day trip around South Central Mongolia and it was amazing. I invited to come along and check what happened. First, let me introduce you to some people who made the trip extra special. This is Lisa. Lisa is an incredibly amazing and adventurous woman from Italy. But she wasn't here alone. She was here with Eduardo, her husband. He couldn't really communicate in English, so he communicated in Spanish. And this is Duke. Duke was our tour guide. We have known each other since before the tour. He can cook very good meals. And finally, this is Baggy. Baggy was our driver. He was a little crazy on the bumpy rides, which made it extra special.
The trip began. I didn't really know what to expect from it. On the way, we would find some very cute little towns with restaurants where we'd stop for lunch. I love animals, and we would see them pretty much all the way. Our first stop, though, was in these very peculiar rock formations where they claim there's water that's good for the eyes. Well, however, the water comes out of the rock. That's what makes it interesting. How? I don't know. Not far from it, we visited the ruins of this old Buddhist monastery, which was destroyed over the communist era. Around 4:30 in the afternoon, we arrived to our gear camp, and I met our little gear, the kind of tent where we'd spend the night. It was so cute. And this was our bathroom. I was so happy to be in the countryside, and I even had the chance of seeing goats being milked. That was a first for me. It was almost dinner time, and I was watching Duke closely prepare it. We had driven 248 kilometers, and the sun was going down, announcing the first day of the tour was almost over. The next morning, we packed and got ready to leave, but first had breakfast with new friends from Spain, from Chile, and one, well, he was a special one. After driving for about 1 hour and a half, we finally hit some paved road, the first ever since we had left UB. After doing some grocery shopping, we finally hit the road again, and the surprises started showing up. A quick stop on the road for lunch, and we arrive at the White Cliffs. The Mongolians believe it once was the bottom of the sea. It's nearly 4 p.m. when we arrive at the Gear camp we're spending the night at. There it is, that was our bathroom. Well, that's what they look like in most of the Gear camps. That one, to our surprise, had a car battery providing light at night. The second day of the tour was almost over, after driving 245 kilometers that day. It was time for us to go to bed. The days were pretty much the same. Wake up, pack, get ready to leave. We would drive 4 hours, find a village or town to have lunch, but this one, the Landadgad, was special. Not only was the restaurant super cute, but the food was amazing. But I said the city was special. That's because they had public bathrooms where we could shower for the first time in the trip. We drove a little more and got to the Vulture Valley. It's definitely one of my favorite places in all trip. First, we visited a museum to see some wild animals found in that region. Oh yeah, we also learned to play ankle bones, a very traditional fortune-telling game with goat bones.
I don't remember the shape, so you have to tell me.
This breathtaking valley is the end of the Altai Mountains, which goes all the way through China, Mongolia, Russia, through Kazakhstan. Even though it was hot in the middle of the summer, we found a very last piece of ice, given the sunlight doesn't really go through the mountains. The nature, the animals especially, was bringing so much joy to my heart. We drove up to the Gear camp, which was near the museum. Oh yeah, there it is again. That day, we drove 214 kilometers. Day 4 had begun. We had to leave again, and we found this very interesting in the middle of nowhere gas station. The bumpy ride continued until we found this calm, quiet place where we stopped and started preparing our lunch. Soon we found our Gear camp. We had finally arrived at the Gobi Desert Dunes. And hey, to our surprise, we actually had bathrooms with toilets, sinks, and showers. Not bad for a place where we'll spend 2 days. But something scary happened. I woke up from a nap with my ear bleeding. We took care of it. At sunset, we started climbing up the highest sand dune in the Gobi Desert, between 250 and 300 meter high, depending on the wind.
Been climbing for 8 minutes now. This is so, look! It's like a vertical wall. We're just halfway done.
Several pauses and 50 minutes later, it took us 50 minutes to climb up and only 4 to run all the way back down.
Seriously, look at that. I have no idea how big it is.
That day, we added 168 kilometers to the trip. That night didn't really go well. I could barely breathe. I was very dehydrated. But during breakfast, I realized I wasn't really feeling well. Something was very wrong with my body, and I couldn't tell what it was. And I started to get worried.
I'm super sick today. The night was not fun, but I'm ready to have some fun.
I had never ridden a horse before in my life, and now, for the first time, I was going to ride a camel. Yeah, a camel. I was super excited. We rode it for 1 hour and went back to the gear camp for lunch. It was Lisa's birthday. She was turning 50 in the desert, and we prepared a little surprise for her.
Happy birthday to you!
After the ear bleeding and despite the excitement of the party, I knew I wasn't feeling well. Dizziness, fever. Yeah, I couldn't know what it was, but there was a doctor in the gear camp, and she was trying to help us figure out what it could be.
Does it hurt?
A little bit.
I started taking some painkillers. We were in the desert, there wasn't really much we could do. But still had 5 days in the trip, and I wanted to enjoy it as much as I could. It was time for us to leave the desert and start driving up back to central Mongolia again. Our first stop was in Bolgan City. They were having the local Nadam, a cultural national holiday which celebrates their 3 main sports: wrestling, horse race, and archery. It was phenomenal. The next stop was in the Flaming Cliffs. I wasn't really feeling well, so I didn't do much recording there, but several dinosaur bones have been found in that area. It was still early when we arrived at the gear camp, around 3 in the afternoon, so I had the chance to rest a little bit. That camp was so cute. It had different shaped gears. And it also had a bathroom with sinks, toilets, and showers again. I was really happy. This building was a common area. There was a restaurant inside where we could have our meals. Also, we could just hang out, spend some time.
The safe is integral. The integral is like mathematical thing.
The total drive of the day was 147 kilometers. That evening I was really not feeling well, so I went to bed very early. The next morning I woke up feeling a little better, so I made sure I had a good breakfast to have more energy during the trip. It was officially the first day of Nadam that day, and when we got to this village, one family invited us over to their house to watch on TV the opening ceremony of the festival that was happening here in Ulaanbaatar. Around 4 in the afternoon, we arrived at this complex of gear camps. There were 4 of them. That very last one was our gear camp. It had an interesting restaurant in the shape of a castle, where inside the Nadam festival was on TV as well. We left our stuff in the gear and walked up to visit the Ongenjid ruins, this religious complex that was destroyed by the communists during the 30s. Back to the gear camp, I was trying to not do much and just relax, let the body recover from whatever it was going on. That day we drove 149 kilometers and there were only 3 days left in the trip. It was the morning of the 8th day of the trip. After having breakfast and playing a little bit more of the ankle bone game, I had the idea of have everyone sign the dusty tire cover of our car as a memory. As we would drive and get closer back to central Mongolia, the landscape started changing back to a little bit more of green. The stop for lunch was in this little gear, where we met other tourists traveling by and also watched the second day of the Nadam festival. We hit the road and drove up to Harhoding, which during the 13th century was the capital of Mongolia for 40 years.
Are you sure that's Milena that's written
Yeah.
there?
There we visited the Erdin Monastery. It is the oldest Buddhist monastery complex in Mongolia, which was built between 1585 and 86. Something that really called my attention was that the roof of the buildings, they were like puzzle pieces put together. There was no nail whatsoever. We walked a lot that day and I was still feeling weak. I was really happy to find bathrooms when we got to the Gear camp, so I took a relaxing shower, had dinner, watched some girls having yoga class, and I went early to bed after having driven 248 kilometers that day. The morning of the second to last day of the trip was here, so it was time for us to pack and get ready to leave. So we had breakfast and hit the road again. The first stop of the day was in the mini Gobi, this desert area with some sand dunes. Nothing compared to the real Gobi Desert, but still a good attraction for those who can't go all the way there. Lunchtime that day had some entertainment for us. Around 3:15 in the afternoon, we arrived in Ubi. We had to cross the city to go to our next destination. Usually, that trip takes 40-50 minutes. That day, because of the holiday, it took us over 3 hours in traffic. Our last gear camp of the trip was in Terreld, this national park, which is one of the biggest and most important natural reserves of Mongolia. For the 5th day, I wasn't really feeling well. So after dinner, I just went to the gear and I started planning how this documentary would be. The morning of the last day came. We took our breakfast and we went up to the Aryapala meditation temple. Aryapala is a powerful Buddhist god with thousands of hands and eyes in the palms. That means he can see all good and bad things that people do. Those who know me know that I am very afraid of bridges, but I had to cross it so we could get to this temple. It was built in the early 90s in memory of a monk that used to meditate in a cave at that mountain. He was there for over 2 decades, and they believe he was there until he found enlightenment. After visiting the temple, we went to ride a horse. I was really excited because it was going to be my first time. I had ridden a camel in the desert, but not a horse yet. One attraction of Terreld Park is this turtle rock, a rock in the shape of a turtle. We rode for about an hour. Horses are one of my favorite animals, and I had a great time. Tour was coming to the end. Our last stop was in the Chinggis Khan statue complex. The statue itself is 130 feet high, or 40 meters. Inside the building, there are some souvenir shops, some exhibitions about the Mongolian culture, and also a museum where visitors can see part of the artifacts from the Mongolian history. Finally, we went up to the Chinggis Khan statue top. The view from up there is amazing. The statue is made of stainless steel, and it's reported that the complex cost over $4 million. 10 amazing days of discovering more of Mongolia were over, after driving a total of 171,736 kilometers.
Well, I hope you have enjoyed the trip, and I invite you to look more into Mongolia. It's definitely a next place for your adventure. Are you ready to pack? I'll see you here. Bye!